We're so excited tonight. We have some really, really amazing guests who are going to introduce themselves in a little bit, but just a word from us. We started this series because both of our charity organizations were doing very similar panels looking at how we can increase accessibility in the arts, and both agreeing that there's this kind of impeding sense of urgency that the music industry and adjacent other creative industries are just worsening and worsening. The grassroots culture in this country specifically is really suffering, and we wanted to do something about that. And so we got together and we were like, how can we try and make a difference in all this? So we joined together, joined our skill sets, and we've created this series of panels which is going to look specifically at different issues within the creative industries. And all these panels, they have a forward-thinking element to them. You know, we're going to talk about the issues, but instead of kind of making it all like, it's dire, we want to get together and inspire each other and collaborate and come together like both our organizations have, to do the same thing so we can all come together and change things for the better. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the panelists to the stage. So tonight's going to go that we're going to have two roughly half-hour segments of chat with a 10-minute concentration break in the middle, get a drink, have a cig, have some air, do whatever you need to do. And then we're going to have questions in the second half. And the themes we're going to be covering tonight are on the screen. And we're going to probably split them in half and hear from all our wonderful panelists. But first, I think that everyone else would be better at introducing themselves than me. So starting with Keith.
Yeah, I'm Keith. Yeah, so I've been a music promoter for like 14 years. Used to be a teacher. I was a field teacher, and then started promoting shows, and then I got given the job to program the Shackwell Arms, and then we opened Moth Club, and then I started a record shop, which failed. Then I started a record label, which failed, but I've started that working again. And I set up a festival called Wide Awake, and my company Bad Vibrations promotes 300 shows a year, from like 50 cap to up to Ali Pali level, including Lambrini Girls. And a load of other bands like Ammo Sniffers, Dry Cleaning, Black Country New Road. Yeah, loads of cool stuff, so yeah, I'm a very lucky guy.
Hi, I'm John Rostron. I run the Association of Independent Festivals, which was set up 2008. There was 5 independent festivals. I think it was Festival, Field Day, some others I don't know back then, and they were all competitors. They got into a pub or a room, probably similar to this, and even though they hated each other, they were like, what do you do if somebody jumps the fence? I don't know. Where'd you get your toilets from? And they thought that was a good conversation, so they kept it going, and they formed an association to put some money in, and slowly that organisation grew. I took it on in 3 years ago. There was 93 festivals when I joined, so it's gone from 5 to 93. It's now about 170 festivals in the UK. From very small micro festivals, the smallest one is one called the Magic Teapot, 500 cap, totally acoustic. So you get a 24-hour license. All the way up to some bigger ones, lots that you'll know, like End of the Road, Shambhala, We Out Here, but going up to like Kendall Calling, Victorious, and the biggest one, unticketed, is Notting Hill Carnival. And we just help them do really what they were doing back then, which is be in a pub, except nowadays pub is a WhatsApp group, and we help them with training and supporting each other and helping. They still ask the same questions, like, where's an ethical ticketing company? But we also do a lot of work with government, so government come to us and ask questions. What are you doing about SPS policing? You'll know what that means. And we go to them and say, we need some help, please, come and help us. That's my job.
My name is Giles, Quake Bass. I was going to say functioning, working musician, do you know what I mean? Once. I would describe myself as a drummer who is severely ADHD and just can't stop thinking of other things to do. But that's just all self-diagnosis, you know what I mean? Like, I just enjoy trying out lots of different things. I suppose one of them being the Room Studios, where recently we're with Ella for PVA, banging out another one, you know what I mean? Bit of a HQ home from home for a lot of the South London lot. And then music direction is kind of like my day job, I always say, and just building live shows for artists in the capacities where they will see. And I suppose just being around a lot of things over the years. I suppose I've definitely been quite devout to the scene as such, and just been around many different pools and many different circles over the years. I suppose that's how I describe myself.
Hello, I'm Phoebe. I'm in a band called Lamborghini Girls, and we're a punk band. There's not much to say apart from we're really political, and we travel the world a lot and piss a lot of people off in the process. And that's kind of it, really.
So the question that frames the conversation today is, how do we support artists to make ethical and sustainable decisions in an industry that's stacked against them? So the first question I have for all of you is, when we talk about ethical and sustainable choices, what does that actually mean to you in practice?
I'll go, because, someone has to. All right, so, oh God, ethics in the music industry is it's a big one. When I started out, I realized there was like loads of problems. And I was just like a teacher, so I came in, started putting on shows, and then like I realized that bands, like, they really struggle to turn up on time now. People might go like, oh, musicians, they're fucking idiots, they can't turn up on time. That's not the case. These guys have got other jobs. They've got equipment they need to pick up, they've got lockups, they've got maybe 4 different places to come from. So it's like really difficult to kind of make that happen. A lot of promoters would just kind of book a lineup and be like, right, you need to be on time, right, you're not getting a sound check. And one of the first things I thought was like, okay, we need to like buy a backline, even when I was just starting out. So I bought a backline that ended up living in the Shackwell, and it just made everyone's lives a lot easier. And then I was like, great, I've started working with all these cool bands. This is amazing. My company's like already starting out really well. And then lo and behold, some big companies just started plucking these bands out of my clutches. And I was like, wait, what? But we've done all this, you've stayed at my house, I've made you chili for dinner, and I've got you backline, and I've paid you way more than everyone else. But then they got a manager, they got an agent, and the independent just get kind of taken away. As I've got older and the company's progressed, that's not changed at all. So it seems like I've got like quite a good thing going on, but I still lose stuff left, right and centre. So a lot of the times musicians are faced with like ethical choice where they could stay with me, but then they're not allowed to play other festivals. So this is like starting from like really grassroots. So they'll get blocked or they won't get chosen on festivals because they're not with a certain large company or another certain large company. So things like that can happen, and bands are left with ethical choices, and then I'm left with an ethical choice of, do I join the big company or do I stay independent? So from like a really thinking about my first show to think about where I am now, that's one of the biggest ethical challenges that are going on right now. I've dealt with a lot of other ones, but I'll let someone else talk now.
I think being a musician, being on the other side, say someone like Keith, and I'm running around in my underwear screaming about world peace, like, it's very different because, like, what is kind of being ethical in an industry which is adjacent to capitalism in every way? Like, the ties in the music industry are tied structurally to like maximize your profits, and that in itself isn't ethical. So I think it's less about purity and more about being conscious and your intention. And we can't really exist. I mean, I know this sounds like sort of a blasé way to say this. It's hard to exist in this industry and be pure, but you can be in this industry and incite positive change and awareness. So like being ethical practically on a ground level can look like a lot of things. You can be conscious of your carbon footprint. Don't do a Taylor Swift and fly everywhere. When it comes to like production with like merch and stuff like that, make sure you're trying to be ethical and make eco choices. At the same time with certain things like Keith was touching on, like larger corporations, try and stay as independent as you can. That's also really hard when it comes down to like financial autonomy as well. So I think really it's more about being aware and being intentional. Because if you're in this just to, you know, make a butt ton of money and become famous, then that's one thing. But if you want to exist in something to incite a positive change, then that's another thing entirely. And I think it does come down to making sure you're sticking with your guns and also learning and educating yourself more than anything, because I don't think anyone can be perfect.
I can give you, I've had time to think, 3 things from independent festival world, and they all, or festival world, and they all tie to the same thing. So if you go back in time, before my time in festivals, 2017, 2018, the AIF decided that plastic was bad, single-use plastic was bad, and they coordinated with all the festivals to get rid of, it sounds crazy now, single-use plastic straws, right? Which sounds mad, but like, let's all take that step together. And they did, because they could afford to go from a single-use plastic to whatever the sustainable version was. So even though there was a price hike, they could all afford to do it. Great days. Post-pandemic, we all know the costs of delivering events, they've all gone through the roof. So here's 3 examples of the problems that face independent festivals right now. So everybody uses cable ties. And there are these amazing, loads of versions of sustainable cable ties. Nobody can afford to take that jump. Right? So the plastic straw thing is gone. Let's move up the level. There's a festival called Valley Fest, who I think about 10,000 cap a few years ago. They took a stance that like they get approached by sponsors and brands, and they didn't want to have cigarettes or vaping because that was like not to what they believed in, even though they really needed the money. And they said no to those people who were knocking on the door. On the day of the show, on the morning of the show, somebody drilled through a water pipe where the bar was going to be. So I shouldn't be laughing, but there was water going everywhere. They couldn't open the bar for that evening. The loss of revenue on that bar took them from profit over the whole weekend to loss. And the following year, the festival had to have a year off. And then let's just go up the chain a bit more. And Keith's probably been close to some festivals have been in this position, but let's pick one. I wasn't around, but Boomtown. Boomtown in 2022 came out of the pandemic, was completely independently owned. And I think Chris and Luke, who owned it, woke up going, it's 12 million quid on our head. It's 12 million pounds of costs. And we're just 2 guys, and we're going through the pandemic. We just can't do that anymore. So they sold minority share to Live Nation and SJM. So they're still independent, as in the majority owned by them, but they're no longer as independent as they were. And who can blame them for that? That's the challenge, I think, at all levels, whether you're big or small with your cable ties.
That's deep. I would add to both points. The reason why I was clicking, because I was saying about, I agree, education is paramount and key, and I feel like this is a perfect example because I'm getting schooled right now as well. I didn't know that. Do you know what I mean? And I would add to that by saying the main thing from an artist perspective, what we can do is educate ourselves and our community and those around us. So I think it's very paramount to just try and be in the know as much as possible without getting bogged down by the stats. Do you know what I mean? Basically, that's all I'd add to that.
Those are all really, really interesting points. I wanted to ask about the timeline of not just artists, but also about businesses, about creative direction, about festivals. What point do you think, the most vital for external people to help support you in making these tough decisions? Do you think it's more at the beginning of the career, or once you've got to that point where you have recognition and you have external interest like Keith was talking about?
Personally, I think it's definitely from the beginning. As soon as possible, again, getting on a kind of education standpoint. The more we can do to empower ourselves in any sense, the better. Do you know what I mean? All creatives. I think you guys are just as creative as us. You know, I say us as like, you know, the players, do you know what I mean? The players of instruments, as Shaka would say, you get me? Like, you know, but I do take it seriously in terms of like trying to do as much as possible to make sure everyone understands, as well as yourself, as to why you're doing it. Do you know what I mean? This bit of technology or this thing that we need to know about to be able to do this. And then it snowballs, and you know what I mean? The DIY aspect is very paramount personally as well. I think that's something that is kind of being sapped away a little bit when we talk about all of these type of notions of equality and ethics and morality and all of this stuff. It's like DIY side of it is out the window completely, in my opinion. But that I think kind of ties into where you're saying, Keith, about like, you know, I work with this band, I'm close with them and we grow together and do all this stuff, and then someone comes along with a big offer, and then it's kind of like, well, I also have to make sure that my community is up as well as everyone else, you know what I mean? But then to keep that going, the DIY pillars, these little things that you can rely on, will kind of like hopefully sway the mindset ever so slightly to keep people on this side of the. Do you see what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, I'm really lucky. So I started promoting King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizards. Like first ever UK show was at the Shackwell Arms, like tiny show now. Looking back, it's really fun. I actually crowd surfed. I actually, you know what? That day I got, because I was always really paranoid about losing bands, right? And I got the worst fucking haircut I've ever had, right? And like, I was like, shit, am I gonna lose this band because my haircut's so bad? So anyway, like 13 years later, they've headlined Wide Awake, and they stayed with us, and they essentially built a pathway. They got to like Brixton Academy, we sold at Ali Pally twice. We did 24,000 tickets at Wide Awake. So they stayed with us and they helped our company grow, and it grew with them. Where other bands were like, nah, this is like, I had a shed in my garden where all the bands used to sleep. Like Viagra Boys, Amyl and the Sniffers, My Kids Saw Some Shit. And, but yeah, I think one of the strongest things, right? So if you're in a band or you're setting up your own company, there is something to be said about trying to be self-sufficient up to a point. So if you can build a little like world around yourself where people will try and come in and they want you because they want to make money, as we were talking about a minute ago, if you can create like a little bubble for yourself, and whatever it is you're doing, if you're in a band, if you are a creator, if you are a promoter or a label, like a tiny label, keep going with that until someone who comes into your world who just feels right. They've got a new energy that will help you improve what you're doing, or they just feel like an ally. Don't just be like, oh, someone wants to help me, I'm going to go with them. You need to wait for the right person, and you'll feel it in your bones. If you feel like there's a red flag, then just fuck them off.
Following on from that, I want to ask you, Phoebe, specifically, as the front woman of Lamborghini Girls.
Hello.
Can you tell us about a time when you found that person? The all green flags go.
I mean, I think for us, it was kind of like, I think like attracts like, and like the majority of like major labels or major promoters saw us and they were like, what the fuck's going on there? So they didn't really want us anyway. So I don't think it was really a case of us being like, oh wow, we've had all of this money offered to us, but we're not going to take it because no one was offering us that money. And I think, you know, mainly a lot of the reasons why is because we were probably seen as like a flight risk a lot of the time, from the issues that, you know, we were talking about and being very vocal about on stage, which was obviously a blessing because it means, I mean, we've worked with Keith for fucking ages now, like we've worked together for years.
Too long.
Too long, yeah.
I went to Paris to see them, I don't know why.
Yeah, why were you there? You just turned up. But no, yeah, Keith's a legend. But really for us, I think, in regards to like making major choices and stuff, like, we've always been quite lucky where we've kind of been guided into more sort of like independent routes with like an independent promoter, opposed to someone like Live Nation, because they fucking suck, or going with an independent record label has done it. And it basically means that you have more autonomy. You don't have, you know, full autonomy, like we don't, not even close, but you have a lot more than you would if you were tied to, you know, bigger corporations. So for instance, like a label, we're on a label called City Slang, and they're like a mid-level label, and they'll say like, maybe don't do this, maybe don't do that, but I can mainly tell them to fuck off. I'd be like, I'm gonna do it anyway. But say if we're on like a major label on like Universal, if we didn't do something that they wanted us to do, or we said we're still going to say this and they didn't want that, they have a lot more power over their artists to stop them from doing things, because they basically own them. And the amount of money that they put into those artists, the line of like autonomy gets really, really blurred. So a lot of the time, like, I'll hear a lot of people being like, why did this artist not say this thing? Or why is this artist not doing that? And I think to kind of demystify a lot of the way, it's because like they're owned by their label, who really a lot of the time control what they do. And if they don't, if they get dropped, they still have to recoup, you know, £500,000 for them. So it's like, I think we've been very, very lucky, but I think if you can stay as independent as possible, and as Keith said, have, you know, the right people around you who are going to be allies, you're able to keep, you know, autonomy in an industry which kind of tries to take it away from you, basically.
In terms of the major choices you were talking about, you know, these difficult decisions, weighing up these two factors, being independent or going bigger and kind of going towards bigger corporations, I was wondering for all of you, if there was a point in your career where you essentially said, fuck it, I'm just going to do exactly what I want to do.
I definitely did. Oh man, I mean, it's a long story short, but I was very fortunate to work with the villain MF Doom, shout him out, rest in peace. And as a big fan, from a very young age, then becoming like the guy at the back on stage, that showed me everything I needed to know, to be honest with you, do you know what I mean? So that definitely was a turning point where I was like, okay, I see now that there is definitely a whole other reality for artists and creatives, and the whole thing just changed, all flipped on his head personally. And I think just to shout out the villain a little bit more, he's definitely an example of what you can do on your own, completely. Do you know what I mean? Time and releasing the same music on different labels. Do you know what I mean? He could go to any venue and fill it out. No one knew he was. Do you know what I mean? Like, he living a quite idyllic lifestyle as an artist. And yeah, I just feel like I was blessed to be able to see all the facets and all the kind of the intricacies of what makes this thing, this character, this whole idea that man created into a thing. And yeah, it just made me realize that honestly anything is possible if you like just learn how to do it and apply yourself. Like, I know it sounds kind of like whoa, but I genuinely do believe that. And yeah, I think the reason why I wanted to put that in the room, to be honest with you, is just because, like, you know, as I think you're saying earlier, it's not just about like the kind of, you know, the angst and the isms of the industry. Do you know what I mean? Like, I am definitely a living example of just doing your own thing and following true, and you know what I mean? It will happen if you just keep doing it. So I just want people to know that. But it started with Doom. Yeah. 100%. Do you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I've got, it's a bit different, but so I got offered the Shackwell Arms job, and I was just like a part-time promoter, but I was a teacher, and I was about to have a kid, and I was like, fuck, do I take this job? And like the pay was so bad, and lose like a steady job and take this job, and I was like, right, if I do this, then I can put more Bad Vibe shows on, then hopefully I can make enough money to have a kid, because he's coming in like 2 months.
That's not how children are made.
I don't know. So let's move on from that. So yeah, and I remember, right, so I told the school I was working in that I had a bad back, which wasn't true. And I went to where the offices were, and went in and met the guys, and I was like, shit, so I typed up that I wasn't taking the job, and I've still got the email and a draft, along with about 82,000 other drafts of my bad ideas. And it's written out, and I'm like, I can't take the job, I've got a kid coming. And then I was like, oh God, like, remember the Braveheart speech when he's like, if you could come back here for just one chance, you know, when you're dying in your bed and all that stuff. And I was like, fuck, I could try it, I could get another teaching job. So I like tossed and turned and decided to go for it after like being like, nah, I need to like look after this kid. And so what happened then was I just ended up creating this like insane drive and like will to like make it happen. So if you have come to a crunch point, like never underestimate how hard you will try to make something that you want to do in a creative field, something that you love, you will turn up for every fucking day. I used to walk past the school to get the train, the school I taught in. So every day I'd walk past that school and I was like, fuck, I could be in there marking like maths, which is, I've not got the attention span, I'm doing marking. I used to get like the kids to do it themselves. So yeah. So every now and again I'll have a moment when I'm struggling and I'll just like walk past the school and I'll be like, right, let's get these fucking emails done, get that settlement sent over. And yeah, you need to find something in you, and sometimes making that jump, that'll push you on, it'll push you way, way, way harder than you ever thought was possible.
You should teach settlements in school. I mean, maybe you should ship them out to the kids.
Could be done.
So just to wrap up this portion of the panel before we take a little break, I wanted to set up the second half of the conversation, which is going to be about forward-thinking actions and what we can do joining together to create meaningful change. So to set that up, I wanted to ask you guys all the questions about what you think are the biggest barriers in making the decisions you really want to make.
Money. Everything's money. It's fucked. Like that's the issue. It's like everything revolves around money. So if you don't have loads of money, or you don't have like mummy and daddy giving you loads of money, you can't make the same decisions as someone who would. Again, I think it's impossible to be ethically pure. Maybe that makes me a pessimist, but that's just it. I don't have loads of money, so maybe that's why I think that. But what you can do, I think the biggest barriers are basically other people who have lots of money telling you not to do something. But I think at the end of the day, if you really want to do something and people are telling you not to do something, I think you're within your rights to tell them just to fuck off and do it anyway. And then if they don't like you, find someone else who does like that, really. And maybe that is less realistic, but at the same time it means you keep your political integrity a bit more intact. Yeah.
I think I agree. But I don't want to say that, and I don't want to say money as well. I think the biggest barrier is, or one of the biggest barriers is the ability to see a different future. So, like, there was a time when we didn't have a weekend. It seems fucking nuts, doesn't it? The idea that we didn't have a weekend. And now, if somebody tried to take our weekend off us, we would have a war. And there was a time when there wasn't an internet, and I remember that time. There was a time when there wasn't mobile phones, and I remember meeting my friends by calling them and saying them I would be in the middle of Stourbridge at a certain time at a certain point. And for a lot of people here, that's just inconceivable. In our world, there's some things that I think should change, but you need everybody to believe in changing them. So I think we should get rid of artist exclusives. Because artist exclusives are seen as this really amazing, cool thing, but they actually fundamentally serve capitalism, and they don't serve the planet. They don't serve audiences, and they don't serve people. I want to get, many artists will be aware of, there used to be things like the artist rider. It was like, you can have this amazing rider, and they were incredibly destructive. Alcohol on the rider was incredibly destructive, but we've managed to change those things. What about, I'm just trying to think, there's probably something else in this space that we should, anyway, yeah. But they're the sort of things that we should be sort of thinking about in a different way.
Just quickly on that, can you explain a bit more to people what artist exclusivity means?
Yeah, I was going to say artist fees, high artist fees. The idea that you should reach a certain level and get paid an amount is bullshit. And like, artists are struggling. 99% of artists, I've not answered your question, so I'll come to that. 99% of artists are struggling, and partly, not entirely, that's because the 1% are taking all the money that they fucking can. The idea that, and that's the same across society, the idea that you get to a point you deserve it is bullshit. So, and the artist community should rise up against those artists at the top and call it out. The reason that a lot of all those artists are struggling, those mid-tier artists are struggling, is because a lot of artists at the top, the Harry Styles, the Bruno Mars, the Liam Gallagher's and all that lot, are taking all the fucking money out. They're rinsing it out.
Yeah, you get support's getting 50 quid a show to go around Europe and support like a massive act. It's disgusting.
Yeah. So that needs going out. So artist exclusives are, God knows where it started. It probably started with a reasonable thing, maybe, a reasonable concept, but artist exclusives are the idea that, particularly, let's just stick with festivals for now. So you booked your headline talent in the old days, you booked your headline talent, I booked whoever, Lambrini Girls, they probably wouldn't do them. I booked my talent, but I'm a bit worried that I spent a lot of money, I don't want everybody else to have them, so I'm going to pay a premium so I get it exclusive, so it's the only place they're going to play, right? Because I put £1 million on the table or whatever. And there's a sort of logic to that, right? Because in the music industry, there's a lot of people who would take that £1 million and also put them on 3 or 4 times down the road. And Keith will know what that feels like. But then that's just got crazy. That goes right down the bill at the major festivals. So you'll go down some of the major festivals' bills and you'll see artists that are tied to these exclusives. They won't say they're exclusives, by the way. They'll say they're something else, but they'll limit them. They won't be able to play anywhere else. So that artist can only play a number of shows through the year, probably exclusively for them, can't go and play all the other places that they want to play, can't tour through the summer, can't earn the money that they really want to earn. Sometimes they might actually get paid quite well, but where it gets ridiculous, I mean, actually maybe we can come to pricing as well, but where it gets absolutely ridiculous. Maybe this is related to it, so I'm getting, like, there's an artist last year, a major artist, who played 2 nights at a big show, let's say Wembley Arena, right? So, a few years ago, that artist played 2 nights at Wembley Arena on a certain price ticket and sold it out. And then last year, the same artist went back because of control of a corporation, because of dynamic ticket pricing type ideas, because of exclusives, played 1 night and only sold 2/3 of the ticket. Now they got paid more than they made over 2 nights. But who gets served better there? Right, there's a stadium or an arena and a third that didn't get to see them, right, because they were priced out. There's all of that merch sales and all these other things. There's the venue that then's got an empty night, but the artist has got more in their pocket. But going back to that point earlier, maybe the artist didn't even know, wasn't even around that conversation about what happened. And artist exclusives are part of that. It's absolutely throttling audiences' ability to see people. And when we talk about the planet, there's a report coming out on Wednesday called the Show Must Go On report, which is this huge 5-year piece of work. It happens every 5 years. There's a nod going on over there. Huge piece of cross-sector report, 139 pages. And it talks about all the things that outdoor events can do for the planet. And guess what? One of the #1 things is in outdoor events, audience travel. So the idea that an artist exclusive is good for the planet is bullshit, because actually you're getting everybody to come down to one place in London normally to go and see somebody. Whereas actually if they could stay at home or go to their local area and see them, it would be better for the economy, better for the planet and so on. That was a long round, sorry.
I will just add just a little bit from, again, the kind of like DIY space. Definitely we as artists, I'm sure you're with me on this, have to just take it on the chin that we have accepted a lot of foolishness over the years. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the whole notion of playing a festival for a case of beer.
Yeah.
You get what? Yeah, that was normal when I was like, you know what I mean, certain era or whatever. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of things that I would put under the umbrella of the artist plight. You get me? You're just kind of stuck in this place where the artists are getting bent over and you know, all types of fuckeries going on for the artists. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's a level as artists that we have to say, okay, you know what? Without MU or whatever, we can just agree that like in our scene, we should all just congregate to the degree to at least know how much the value and worth of the thing we are selling is going for. Just that alone means that if I'm on this corner and you're on that corner, we're not clashing in price. Do you understand what I mean? Yeah? So there's that side of it, and then there's also, again, going back to this kind of notion of education and understanding what it is you're actually doing when you're going to these environments and playing these shows. I think as artists, again, we have to take a bit more responsibility and say, actually, they're using me to sell alcohol. Do you get what I mean? Yeah, do you know what I mean? They're using this thing I've built to sell this. So where do I sit on the economic scale of like, what do I get out of it? Where's the money going back to, and how much money from Dread has come into my pocket and back out again? That's the type of education I'm talking about. I'm just kind of putting that in the space just so people understand where I'm coming from, basically, yeah.
I think that's a really, really great point to end this first half of the conversation on. We'll come back, we'll revisit these themes in about 10-15 minutes. So it's 8:15 now. We'll restart again at 8:30. See you in a bit. Conversation by saying we will be accepting questions from the audience at the end. So if you want to start thinking about those, please do. And so for this second half, we're going to talk a bit more about specific actions, specific examples in your careers that you've dealt with difficult situations, and tackling one of the issues that John brought up in the first half about how we can collectively envision a better future for the creative industries. And to start that off, I wanted to open the conversation on the two main barriers that we talked about right before the break. So we have money and we have inability to envision a better future. So I'd like to ask the panelists, firstly, in terms of money, what are sometimes or a specific example in your career where you've done something you're really proud of without any money, completely DIY?
I just seen the sticker there, that's so jokes. So on Ella's laptop, there's this, yeah, that word, yeah, careful with the connection. There's a sticker on there that says them ones. And them ones is basically another thing another brainchild is what I like to call it, you know. Yeah, because I just keep having brain children. Them ones was basically an idea to be able to document cultural commentary through language in fashion. So I'd put slogans from patois, which is Jamaican dialect, which controversially some people will call broken English, so there lies a bit of the dichotomy already, do you know what I mean? And try and put that into some sort of tangible logo and imagery, and then use that finance to be able to put music out to demonstrate that you can just have an idea, do something, flip it, and get on your merry way to putting out your music. So for me, I would say them ones as an achievement. We've done London, who was the neighbours to the room in the building where the studio is, and because I was very fortunate to be next door to screen printers, who are also part of the graffiti community and the graphic design world, it all kind of culminated very quickly. And then I feel like I learned a lot about how to collaborate with people that you know nothing about their medium. I know nothing about fashion, I know nothing about graphics, I don't know, do you know what I mean? But I do know how to sell things very well. So before it was made, it was already sold out. Do you get what I'm saying? And then that's part of the achievement, you know, because then with that profit, we made music, put it out, and did it exactly how I wanted to. I got Dilip Harris, my guy, shout out Dil, to mix it. I got my guy Stuart to press up vinyls, do you know what I mean? And we had loads of t-shirts and socks and badges, and like, yeah, it went mad. It went mad. And I say it went mad, it's not done. It's just on pause. because there's a lot of brain children that need feeding in the village. But yeah, that definitely is an achievement, because it also demonstrates to a lot of people around me in my creative world how easy it is to actually put something out yourself and make money and do it again and again. And I could have done it again if I wanted to, but at that point I had to think about other stuff, do you know what I mean?
There's loads of things in my life as in music that were all done on pennies, but I'm going to jump to something from a year ago. So we run an annual conference, which just happened last week, and Tabitha here, I met, thank you. She was there, give her a round of applause. No, so in my job, so I've been doing the job like 2 years or something at that point, and mostly what I've been doing, I didn't expect to do in the job, was counting festivals that had cancelled. I counted 96 that had gone during the pandemic. I counted 36 that fell in my first year in 2023. And then at the end of 2024, 78 festivals had fallen. And this was like all I seemed to be saying and talking about. And then a few weeks before the conference, perhaps just before Christmas, this guy called Phil Hayes, who was running a ticketing company called Ticket Sellers, who'd just been bought out actually by Citizen Ticket. He came to me and he said, like, John, what can we do about all these festivals that are cancelling? We really should try and do something. Like, what can I do? He was saying, what can I do? And he'd been calling a few other people going like, what can we do? And he didn't have an idea, but he just really wanted to do something. He was like, because he's independent. He runs an independent ticketing company, and he also runs an independent like accreditation company that's used across all the festivals. But the margins are tight. And he was like, I was trying to think if we could offer them something, but the margins are so tight, you know. And then I looked, and in the 2024, although 78 festivals had fallen, am I in the right year? I'm trying to remember where I was. Although 78 festivals had fallen, there was quite a lot that had taken fallow years. So rather than just cancelling, they were saying, we're going to take a fallow year. So I said, well, there's 12 or whatever that have taken a fallow year, and actually, maybe if we just thought about them, because they're not gone, they're on their way out, and there's still hope. And I said, look, we will offer a 3 years membership to AIF, which we do anyway in our membership. So if you're a member of ours and there's a problem, we immediately offer you free membership. It's one of the things we try and do, like a hospital, to help. It shouldn't be the point when you get charged. And he was like, oh yeah, we could do that. Yeah. We could offer free tickets up to 2,000. We won't have any booking fees or anything. It's all free. And we'll offer them free use of our accreditation software. And I said, that's it. And we'll call it the Fallow Festival Fund. And we launched it about 2 weeks later on stage at Congress, or he did. And that's all we had. That's all we had. We set up a crowdfunder because we thought we would need money. One man in the crowd put 40 quid in. That was the only money that went in. But what happened is people got in touch. In the room there was other suppliers, and it made the industry press, and people got in touch. And they said, we can offer counter-terrorism software. We can offer consultation about how you run your stages. We can offer structures at 25% off. And it was incredible. Now, a year later, we've just relaunched that Fallow Festival Fund. 22 suppliers across, from legal to ticketing to counter-terrorism, have all offered things above and beyond what they could normally offer you to festivals if they're on a fallow year. In other words, like, we're going to try and go a bit deeper and try and help pull you back. Already this year, 6 festivals have already cancelled, 3 are on fallow years. And so together we can pull something back. And none of that is about money. You know, we're starting with nothing, we're just starting with people who want to help, who think they've got something they can put in. And it was one of the most inspirational things that happened to me last year, and it was, again, when Sophie on my team was calling everybody and getting the response, it was wonderful. And it was all done really with no money.
My festival, Wide Awake, is on a fallow year. So I'll be talking to you later.
That's 4 then.
So, speaking of festivals, so when I was a really small promoter, I'd kind of hit this ceiling where I could book bands who like didn't have an agent or a manager, but my company wasn't like big enough to go and talk to an agent and just be like, who's this guy like cold calling me, Bad Vibrations, that's just such a shit name. So I would just get like nothing back, and I was like, shit, I need to make an angle. There's always an angle. You've got to make angles to get yourself up to the next level. So I came up with this idea called Label Mates, because I just saw it written down like they're label mates with like so and so. So I was like, label mates, how about we make a festival called Label Mates? So it's made up of labels and mates, so it's essentially a collaboration between labels and then record shops, like, I don't know, you could get a band to curate, we've had all sorts of people down the years, and I started contacting record labels and they were like, oh, this sounds interesting, because they're not like big bastard agents. They were like, this sounds like quite a fun plan. And I was like, how about you bring all your bands to the Shacklewell in one day, and then we do it over a week? And then everyone was like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. And that's how I met Heavenly, who've ran this place for like a long time, and are like legendarily inspirational people, and various other record labels. So I got my foot in the door with a label, then I got access to their acts, and we put together this free entry festival at the Shacklewell, and it totally changed my career around. And it didn't cost anything, apart from paying the bands, but luckily the Shacklewell paid for that. And it was a massive success, and I didn't make any money, but like, ideas is what he said, Giles, and angles. These are things that don't cost anything, and if you're an artist, promoter, record label, whatever it is, there's always an angle to get access to where you need to go. You just need to think about it. It's problem solving.
I think community too. So like, if you want to do something good, you want to make a splash, you want to do something positive, and you don't have any money to do that, it's a lot easier if you have other people around you who are also willing to help. So like, to do a fundraiser show, a lot of places, you know, might have a venue hire, and then if you're trying to fundraise for, say, something like Medical Aid for Palestine or something like that, that means there'll be a chunk of money which is taken away from that. But sometimes people are massive legends, and they'll be like, yeah, you can have this venue for free because you're doing it for a good cause. So all it's really going to cost you is like 10 quid, 20 quid on the train max, and you might have some friends who want to support, who are also legends, and they want to do that for free. So I think community and relying on each other is something that is, you know, inherent in so many situations. But to do something good in a system which kind of separates ourselves, you know, makes us individuals, there's a lot more strength, and we can do, you know, some really, really positive things in numbers too.
Yeah. Facts. Big fact.
So yeah, community and collaboration. These are the two things that we have as like the pillars of what we need to make better futures. And going back to this idea that John was talking about how one of the biggest barriers is this inability to envision a greater future, because right now things are just, like, for lack of better words, so shit in some regards. And I'm going to ask you all how, so be careful with what you say next. But what does your greater future look like, and how do we get there realistically? Because we could have this utopian idea of what the perfect industry will look like, but in terms of real steps, that's what I'm interested in.
Fucking hell.
I'm happy to go.
Yeah, please.
You want to go? Because, okay, so
Yeah.
Within my world, when I started in my job, one of my festivals kept saying, what are you going to do about Live Nation? And I was like, I don't know. Like, why? What's the problem? And he just kept hassling me about it. And I said, how does Live Nation impact your festival in any meaningful way? And he couldn't give me an answer, so I dropped it. The other thing that happened was when I started the job, I used to have these regular meetings with government, and in the handover meeting, my predecessor had mapped the sector, and he talked about Live Nation a lot, and Live Nation was in the meeting, and you could see the officials glaze over, and that's kind of key. It's like they were not interested, they were interested in the other things. So that was that. And AIF's all about building the independents, building them up, helping them networks and share. Somewhere on that journey, I realised that Live Nation was a problem, and came to my own epiphany moment that, like, there's a big, it doesn't matter how much we build up all these little independents and bring them together, if we don't do something about that, there's going to be a problem. So we're doing something about it. So in June last year, there was an opportunity to submit some evidence to a thing called, this is quite dull, called the Department for Business and Trade Select Committee, who were talking about various things. They'd talked to Ticketmaster, they brought Ticketmaster in January, they were bringing them back. But actually, they were kind of surprised. The guy from Ticketmaster, Andrew Parsons, I think that's his surname, I've forgotten, Febuary, who's kind of like one of the heads of Live Nation, were presented with a load of facts and figures, and they came from me. With the permission of my board, we went public, and they were presented with some figures. The first figures they were given were that they, of all of the indoor concerts above 5,000 capacity in the UK, they controlled 66% of them. Now, a monopoly in the UK is anything over 25% if you own something. But it's not just about having a monopoly, it's about how you abuse that dominant position. And that was the start of the questions. It's a great watch if you want to watch it again. Yeah. But it was a big risk to do it because we knew that they wouldn't come from me. Well, actually there was, I have to say, there was about 5 months where I was worried they were coming from me. I don't think they're going to come from me anymore, although they don't like me. But then what we wanted was an actual inquiry into, I mean, what were we seeking? We're seeking regulation. You know, we're seeking, there shouldn't be a monopoly power. There are rules by which markets in the UK are governed, and in our view, they were above and beyond they have a monopoly, or we believe they have a monopoly. I have to be careful what I say. We believe they have a monopoly, and we believe they abuse their position, and so we want everyone just to play fair, and fair is what the law looks like, and fair is government's decision, and there's some rules out there, and we thought that they were breaking the rules. So over a long summer, we were rewarded in the autumn. So the government announced, the same committee then announced a full inquiry into competition in the live music industry. And we made as much noise about that as possible. And we submitted our evidence, which went in a week ago on Friday. Now in our submission, there's lots of things that people might deem competition in live music in the UK. Our focus is entirely just on Live Nation. And my submission is on Live Nation. I'll just give you some statistics, because it's important, I think. We've mapped, or I've mapped, in my weekends, all of the festivals in the UK. Of the festivals of 5,000 capacity and above, that's kind of like, you can't compare Reading to Magic Teapot 500, but you could say, yeah, but you can say that anything about 5,000 above is a sort of fair competition. Live Nation have 28% of that market share. That's a monopoly. When you do outdoor concerts, at the point, so outdoor concerts in the UK, they bought a company called Cuff & Taylor in 2016, 2017, and they've massively spread that company over the UK. There's 265 outdoor concerts in the UK this year at the point that we counted. And I did this at conference actually. Guess how many Live Nation run? Out of 265.
260.
Close, 207. 78%. 78%. Now, they've had a good week for the stats because Neil Young's just cancelled, so they've gone down a bit. But they've been interestingly, on the State Fair website, State Fair Instagram and everywhere else, there's no mention that Neil Young's not playing. But they've been added shows too. So just starting with the stats, that company, we believe, has a monopoly, but then we submitted some evidence about other activities that they do, which is about abuse of market dominance. So your question, I think, was about envisaging a better future. My focus entirely, and our organisation's focus, or my focus with the support of my board, is I want that to go through the right process. So I want a full inquiry. So we're hoping there'll be an inquiry in the spring, and we're hoping an outcome of that will be that the Competition and Markets Authority then investigate Live Nation. That'll be a 2-year process, and at the end of that process, we expect them to break them up. That's what we're looking for. That's the future that I believe is fair. There won't be, Live Nation will still exist, there'll still be a company, Ticketmaster will still exist, it just won't be owned by them. If I get my way, they won't own the AMG venues anymore. Thank you. And Cuff & Taylor will be something, they'll do something to Cuff & Taylor, right? So, but, so, what? Cuff them! There's comedy between us here, right? Yeah. So, it's possible, I think. But that's possible, just going to Phoebe's point, with community. It wasn't just, we had the evidence, I needed my board's support. It's a big step for my board, because they'll come from my board and my members. They will look at, they do it. They put artist exclusives, constantly taking artists off the, I can't say too much, but Live Nation, I can tell you this, because their lawyers can come for me and they will lose on this one. Sometimes Live Nation make a decision about artists playing at non-Live Nation events. It's Live Nation that sign off those performances. That's not the world that we kind of want to live in. So that's kind of what we're fighting for.
My utopia is a bit different, but I mean, no, like I'm all for it. So I used to be a teacher, and towards the end, when I was like, when I had a bad back, I was teaching primary because it's a long story, but my subject, modern studies, which is like the sociological study of the future and the past, the future 10 years and the past 10 years doesn't exist in England, and it definitely should because it's a genius subject. I ended up teaching primary school, so I was teaching like every subject, like the Romans and the Vikings and mad shit like that. But what happened was Ofsted got really aggressive, and the school I was working in cut down any creative art, so we're talking art, music, anything like that, to about 30 minutes a week. Which I know sounds crazy, but everyone is chasing this dragon of Ofsted results because they want more funding. They want to be in like this echelon of like greatness that's all based on like numerical things, especially difficult if you have a lot of refugees in your school who don't speak English, and then you've got a whole challenge of kind of making that work as well. So I think the government are really stifling in a monumentally large way our future children's potential for growth, especially working class children. I grew up in a working class family that didn't have access to musical instruments, which is like a real regret. And then playing recorder for 2 years when I was 11 and 12 was like about all I got, and then I fucked it off and did something else. So I think barriers to entry are going to be one of the most key things that need to be, people need to be given musical instruments from a young age at school, or like hopefully at home. So grants of musical instruments, more teaching in schools, just like some time, even if it's after school club, whatever it is. These things then end up creating bands, creating situations. When I started, there was hardly any female acts. It wasn't even that we weren't choosing them, there just wasn't any. And one of the things I did with Wide Awake, mostly partly to having quite a lot of females in our team and them really striving for it, was to do 50-50 lineups from as soon as we started. So we had 50% male and 50% female on every Wide Awake from the very first one, and then it just, you could just see the drip feed effect that had then other festivals started to do as well. I'm not saying we were the first people to do it, but that's been a really positive change as well. So, and also like shout out to all the non-binary acts that we work with as well, there's loads of them. We making a noticeable change in these things, you will see a difference. It won't happen today, tomorrow, but 4 or 5 years down the line, that pipeline will change, and the government really needs to do something about that, and that would be one of the things I would change if I could.
I would like, in my utopia, it's like a serious meeting now. Do you know what I mean? Of some kind of weird fantasy almost, do you know what I mean? But it's not all fantasy. I would like to see more artists knowing their value and worth before they talk about any kind of money in any capacity. Do I know how many bums on seats my thing that I've created will put on the seat, for example? Or like, do you know what I mean? Just having that understanding, I think that's very important. I'd also like to see, I mean, this is more a personal one now, but like it's more, on some level, I'd like to see a way in which artists are able to build enough of an economy around them and their community and their village to the point where it becomes a threat to Live Nation and all the other suits, basically. Do you know what I mean? I feel like, again, going back to this, it's not all our fault, but there's partly more we can do, I do believe. I have to stress that, do you know what I mean? And within that, what I'd like to see on a utopia vision level is to just work out ways in which people can say, all right, we know if we do this event, merch, whatever, play the game as the game is, or whatever rules you want to play by, but only play it if you know you're going to win. Do you know what I mean? You know, he said I only play the games that I win at, you know? And I would also like to just add, I think it's very important that as artists, we really appreciate the fact that we're able to do this, because the point you tapped on in terms of access and class, I think now more than ever, it's very important to recognize that yes, it is mad, but yes, there's also a lot of opportunity, regardless of, you know, whichever isms you're struck with. Do you know what I mean? Like, we are still in a very fortunate position here in London, in the scene, and in this kind of creative world that we exist in, you know, but we also have a responsibility. There is a lot of other, you know, creative scenes that are looking to London. It's like a benchmark for a lot of people who want to come here and play in London, innit? Do you know what I mean? But as Londoners, we're there going, oh, bloody hell, this is fun. You know what I mean? Like, it's not all dread, you know what I mean? Like, it's not, you know. So I just thought I'd throw that in the room as well.
I think going back to community and the government, I think those are two things which kind of don't really work hand in hand, because when we talk about like the music industry being broken, we're kind of talking about the system being broken. Like, you know, it is a microcosm of capitalism, basically.
Yeah.
But I don't think the system is broken. I think the system is working exactly as how it's intended to work. You know, it's like the economic sort of like system and patterns, it's like the winner takes all. So of course we're going to have these huge corporations running everything, and then we're all underneath trying to get the scraps. It's extremely exploitative, whatever level you're at. So really, you know, the government, number one, they love this shit because they love big business, they love corporations. They don't give a shit about community. So what do we do there? Because there is a lot of power in community and driving community, and we have a lot more collective power as people together than we do individually. So things I think we can do in my utopia, like in an ideal world, I'd like to see less like 6-piece, like all white cis male boy bands going, "Aah!" But you know, that's probably not gonna happen. But
Agreed.
yeah.
I'll be bankrupt.
It's comedy for real now, isn't it? Funny because it's true though.
It is so true.
I like that. Yeah. Can I just add something that you reminded me now, because I forgot what I was going to say. The other thing I would like to say is that in the black community, from around the Windrush type era, I want to say a little bit earlier, but do you know what I mean? Some of the elders will be able to correct me on this. But there was a thing called a partner scheme. Does anyone know what that is? Yeah. All right. So a partner scheme was the way in which the impoverished black community would pass around a little bit of money that they could get. Also, the Irish was on it. Yeah. Shout out my great granny Thelma. Ghanaian Irish. You get me? Original source, yeah? So, I mean, Oracle level source, you know what I mean? But I saw firsthand how, when you talk about, you know, before the internet and like phone, and you just find your mate in the, you know, wherever, like I am still kind of from that era, but I saw elders around me being able to create an economic structure within their little community by using a partner scheme. A partner scheme is where, for example, there's 4 of us, we ain't getting a look into whichever opportunity we're trying to get, So one of us does get an opportunity. So there's £50, you get the £50 first. Out of that £50, you say, I'm gonna hold £10 and put it in the partner. Now I get my little £50 job. Before long, everyone who's getting their £50, we all put £10 in the pot. Put it in at the beginning of the month. So on the first of the month, there's £40 excess for one of us to take and run with and try a move, try a ting. And with that £40, you flip it, put back the 40 with your 40 on top. So now I've got my £50, but I've also got my £40 that I made out of the partner at the end of the month. Now I've got £90. Next month, £90. Next month, £90. Before you know it, there's 4 nines. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Keep doing that. Keep doing that. Before long, black people was able to buy property. Was able to, you get me, sustain other people from the islands coming over, support them, put them on. The partner scheme was very integral. I say all that to say, this is an example as artists of what we can do to just start something out of nothing, you know, just ideas and conversation, and work out a way to create a partner that doesn't have to be financial. It can also be Skillshare. My notion, just getting on my little bit now, is to try it with social media, because I hate social media, and I know this will be like, alright, easy dad, do you know what I mean? But like, no, trust me, this is the problem, is that we are, particularly post-COVID, we all kind of went down this tunnel as artists. Like, graffiti artists will go down the tunnel and then you don't know how long the tunnel is. So you get so far down the tunnel and you look back and you're like, shit, there's no light that end, so I have to go this way because that's the only, do you get me? I can only keep going and hopefully a train don't come. Do you get me? So, yeah. And out of that tunnel, we all went straight into this social media notion that we have to do socials to make money and to stay up and to keep on the ting. And I disagree wholeheartedly. And as an example, if there was a partner scheme to utilize social media, so we all big up each other's ting at the right time to make the algorithm do its little bit for whoever, bit by bit, if you're going to use it amongst your people in the way you envisage it to help you and your people, like a partner, then maybe, I don't know, this is just an idea, do you know what I mean? But also an example about this kind of like, you know, things we can, you know, take home and you think as a utopia, as an actual tangible thing. I do believe there's something in that, you know what I mean? The partner scheme, sorry. Whether that applies to money or time or skills or, you know what I mean? No, go ahead.
Well, no, you were not, I was going to jump in on that, but you weren't finished.
I mean, we've got somewhere else, but basically I was just say, just fucking look out for your mates in the music industry.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're like all pushed down this model of like dog eat dog. We've got to be the best. We've got to be the best. You've got to get the most engagement on TikTok, or you've got to be saying, you know, you've got to be like selling 6 different versions of a fucking CD so you can get to number 1 in the charts. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
Really, it's about selling art more than it is the art. In a utopia, it should be about the art and community and looking out for each other, and that's what we will find fulfillment in, basically.
Yeah!
I wanted to come in because I've never heard of the partner scheme, but what you were just talking about at the end, we've just built it.
Yes.
So we just launched it last week. So here's what we did. So a while ago, I realised that collectively our organisation was growing, and that these festivals, if you added their capacities together, it was 1.3 million. Right, it's a big number. And then there's me like looking at this Live Nation people now, and there's 800. They got 880,000 in their festivals, so we got more than them. Now, obviously, that for a moment felt really great. Of course, obviously, we're all about like that's 170 individual independent festivals, not like one company. But it gave us some hope. What can we do with that? And one of the things that we've done is this: is when our festivals sell their tickets, they sell the most tickets on early birds. Then they do their lineup drop, and then the rest of their right, that's where they sell the most. So early bird is the biggest chunk. Then they do the lineup drop, and then the rest of their tickets they've got to sell because you've got to hit 95% plus to break even. Yeah. And that's what I call the hard yards. Now, if you look at that across 1.3 million people, let's say 50% have gone on the early birds, let's say 30-40% have gone on your other bit, you've still got like hundreds of thousands of people floating about that they're all fighting for on social media. They're all doing paid ads. And who wins on paid ads? If we were 4 festivals trying to reach you, point someone there, you bid, we bid, and we all outbid each other, and we might reach you, we might not, but the tech company takes the whole fucking lot. And my theory was like, hang about, we've got all these people in a pot, they're all in a room, they're all part of AIF, they all pay a membership fee and they all share. What if we built a platform where they could, all the audience could be encouraged to go? And that's what we built. We launched it last week. It's called the AIF Directory. It's got 153 independent UK festivals in, and guess what? Got no corporate festivals in. We built it. And so over time, our audiences will be in there. Like, obviously they might still be on Meta and other places, but we're building a place for independents, not for anybody else. Fuck it. The other thing, I just want to say, because she was at the back, but she's gone, where's Charlie? Are you still here, Charlie? So you're just talking about envisaging a future. Charlie from Music Venues Trust is here. You know, a few years ago, Music Venues, or probably longer, she can tell the story better, were like, how can we change this? What about if, and they just came up with an idea, what about if £1 off every ticket on every show above 5,000 cap went into a pot, right, to help people? And everybody that wasn't Music Venues Trust, like, said, no, it's not possible, people will never pay it. Right? Look at Harry Styles tickets this week, right? Oh, they'll never pay it, they'll never pay it. Well, they fought and they fought and they fought and they made that happen. And the Live Trust that now holds it gave out the first round of money last week, so £500,000 to grassroots. This year, I don't know what the numbers are. Charlie, are you there? Charlie! Charlie, it's her and her team. These are the people behind it. I think it's £3.5 million. Well done, Charlie. Yeah. And it's them fighting for a better future, and they're building that future, and we are in that future, and the future looks better, doesn't it, Charlie? Am I putting you on the spot?
A little bit.
But it's all down to like Mark, Bev, Charlie, and the whole team envisaging it, believing it could happen. You know, sitting in rooms where people were charging £200 a ticket, going, "Oh, it'll never happen. People never pay it." Right? And then logically going, "That just doesn't make sense." Like, I bought 4 Gorillas tickets, it cost me £89 in booking fees. I'm sure I'll fucking pay £1, sorry, I keep swearing. Sure I'll pay £1, they did take £1 actually, so I paid £4. I paid £89 in booking fees, of which £4 is going to the grassroots. I'd happily pay a lot more than that, but that's down to Charlie and the team. So you can build it, we're in the middle of some positive stuff. Yeah. Let's still keep fighting. That's for you, Charlie, sorry I put you on the spot.
So as my penultimate question, I want to quickly touch upon ideas of corporations and big businesses. And this kind of, this endless circle where you have, whether it be a big label or a big festival conglomerate, and they kind of run the whole thing, right? But they're intrinsically tied to big corporations. Some of those corporations might not exactly be what line up with your ethics, either as a promoter or as an artist. And when you're in that situation, it's very difficult because there's this idea of opportunity, right, and platform. A bigger corporation hypothetically gives you a bigger platform, whether that be a label or a festival conglomerate or something similar. So as independents, how do you keep true to yourself in those situations? And how do you keep the faith in yourselves Giles was talking about to make a new reality?
I think like there's so many examples you can give, but for instance where there's been unethical corporation sponsors within music festivals, think of The Great Escape, sponsored by Barclays. Barclays basically funding Israeli arms, basically, so funding the genocide in Gaza, and it was the same with South by Southwest, which was sponsored by the American military, which is just fucking insane. But those were 2 huge, you know, topical points recently, in the recent past, about whether artists should be partaking in that. And there was so much fucking discussion between so many people, and obviously I'm very pro-boycott, fuck them. But it's not as easy as that for a lot of people. I think The Great Escape was a really good example of that. And basically it became a movement, you know, Bands Boycott Barclays, which was an amazing movement, and it was spearheaded by an organisation called How to Catch a Pig. It was sick. They're great, check them out. And it was basically about any festival which had ties to Barclays, you should boycott. So it started off as Great Escape, and it was Latitude as well. There was a couple others. And we saw like so many people dropped out and didn't play, and it was fantastic. But the main sort of talking point that came up around a lot of artists was number one was basically there was ties to Live Nation and Barclays. And people were really scared. They were like, well, if I boycott this, will I not be able to play like other Live Nation shows because that's really going to fuck my career? And the answer was no, it won't. But all of this stuff was going around, and I think there is something very intrinsic where it is worth acknowledging that there are lots of bands who are like very low down on the pecking order here, and there is a lot of, you know, we can really mobilise people to make a lot of noise together, which will have an impact. But it's also about separating like the artist from like a massive group of artists, because like if you're someone who's got like 400 like monthly listeners on Spotify and not many Instagram followers, you're going to be like, well, this is going to fuck me, and you know, I'm not going to really it's not going to make much of a difference for me to pull out. But collectively it can, and I think again it's about encouraging people to kind of come together. And I think there are other instances as well, artists who have more of a platform, like it's your responsibility to also lead the way. So there's artists who are like, well, I don't want to fucking do that because you shouldn't tell me what to do. I'm still going to be very vocal about these issues. And that's one way to go about it, but what it also creates is infighting, which is then against the point, because then we're fighting with each other opposed to fighting, you know, these huge corporations, because the talking point becomes who's boycotted and who hasn't, which again isn't constructive. But I think mainly with these things, if you are an artist who is, you know, against the genocide in Palestine, you do have a responsibility to make sure that you are hitting people where it hurts, and you do that with your choices a lot of the time. Can't do it for everything, but if there's like what they call like a targeted boycott, when you target like certain events, if you see one happening, if there's anyone in this room who's an artist, like if you're playing a festival, even if you're like really low down the bill, and you see that someone's organising a boycott to not play something, it's more important to jump on that boycott because you might make a change than it is for you, unfortunately, within that moment. I know with like rent and stuff like that, that comes into it, and that's a totally different story again. There are also, you know, musicians union are really good to speak to about this. I've had to speak to those people, like, I don't know, half the time. I'm like, fuck, what are we gonna do? But at the end of the day, moral integrity is more important than an opportunity, and I think it's hard to kind of remind yourself of that in an industry which kind of asks you to shove moral integrity up your arse and make as much money as possible. But yeah, no, it's hard, and everything is tied. You know, like the majority of festivals, like O2 venues, right? Like they're 50% owned by Live Nation, I'm pretty sure. 51%, which fucking sucks. And Live Nation, as we've established, is mega evil. Something else that Live Nation has is there's a company called BlackRock, who have invested and own millions of pounds of shares within Live Nation, and BlackRock predominantly funds and fuels basically settler real estate happening in Palestine, which involves a lot of murder, a lot of displacement. So this is happening like fucking everywhere, and it's really hard. Again, like intention, you know, is the most important thing, because purity, I would say, is impossible. But collectively, community, organised, targeted boycotts are the way forward, I would say.
Yeah.
Can mine be a bit different? It's not like a massive organisation. I just want to tell you a little bit about last year with Wide Awake Festival. We are a very small organisation. We ended up being up against the UK government, a group of community people who tried to kick all the festivals out of the park, who actually got involved in a scrap with the police, and then these Morris dancers saved them. It's one of the best end of night reports I've ever had. So basically there's like a wall around Brockwell Park while it gets built. It's there for like 10 days, and this lady who gives ayahuasca and magic mushrooms quite a bad name. She's quite Rainbow Rhythms, but like in a negative way, if anyone watches Patreon. So she set up a group to stop the festivals happening in the park, which was quite stressful because we had quite a lot of money on the line. Sorry, I use that again. And it became quite clear that they were gaining momentum, and they'd found some loophole that the council had messed up, not us on the contract. So it went down to the last week, and it was really incredibly stressful. Terrible for ticket sales, as you can imagine, because it was every fucking music blog was like, Wide Awake's about to be cancelled. It's like, cheers guys, get some fucking clicks, you utter cunts. Like seriously, that was pretty tough. At the same time, Kneecap were in the news, and the government were telling us that Kneecap had to be taken off, and we were like, you've not charged them yet. So then 2 days before the festival, they charged Liam. So then they were like, well, we've got to take him off now. And I was like, yeah, but you've not given him a criminal record yet. So that was ongoing. The park thing was ongoing. At the same time, we were getting an like insurmountable amount of heat from a lot of like extremely aggressive IDF supporters, if I can put it, saying that we hated all Jewish people. You'll remember how tense this all got, which is obviously not true. We've always had like a really inclusive festival, but we felt like we'd back Kneecap, we wanted to see it through, and we felt like freedom of speech was still a thing, and yeah, they pushed the envelope on what's kind of, sensible to say on stage. So we had all manners of different organisations and people trying to basically shut down our festival or stop our headliner, and it's the most stressed I've ever been in my life. I can't even remember what it was like, 'cause I just couldn't really even think. It was pretty stressful, and we got the festival away. It was a great day. I mean, they were still trying to cancel Kneecap at like 7 p.m. before they went on stage. There was like lawyers and all sorts of mad shit. And if fucking Tottenham hadn't won the cup against Man United, one of the councillors came like down like pissed after the parade and was like, oh, my daughter loves Kneecap. I'm just going to veto everything that's been going on for like 2 weeks. And they can play it and their visuals can happen. This is how insane our country is. Yeah. Honestly, the guy from Lambeth was like just in this really good mood. He came down, he's in the cabinet. And he was just like, no, it's all good, just let them do what they want to do. At the same time as this, the guys who essentially had bought a bunch of the other festivals, KKR/Superstruct, I'll probably need to cut this out. This is factual, so yeah. So they were being linked with the same settlements in Palestine, and also with like various like weapons. This is all alleged. So multiple people were pulling out of all the other festivals, saying that they were anti-Palestine, that we were on the same side with Kneecap. So it created like quite a lot of difficult situations and tensions, and we had like all sorts of crisis comms. We had the Morris dancers fighting the police outside. And people were saying they were going to come and bomb the festival, they were going to be outside, we were getting death threats. And yeah, it was pretty stressful. So you can find yourself just starting out doing a little show, and then you can find yourself up against governments. But you've got to stay strong, don't make any mad decisions, definitely don't post how you're feeling on social media. But yeah, stay true to yourself, and yeah, don't let people tell you what to do.
That is a fantastic point to wrap up this conversation on. but I'd like to extend questions to the audience. I'm aware that we've run over a bit, but we've had such an amazing discussion, I can imagine lots of people have thoughts. So if you have a question, let us know. Raise your hand.
Just to carry on from before, what happened to Wide Awake this year?
We're going to just bring the mic to you, or we'll try.
I can't really talk about it.
Okay, fine.
It's taking a fallow year.
But yeah, hopefully we shall return.
Just repeat the questions to the mic so that.
Oh yeah. Actually, no, it's fine. We'll just move on from that one. Anyone else?
Hello, thank you so much. And honestly, it's such an important, event to have all of this knowledge sharing and sharing different parts of the music community. I just wanted to ask more about artists, and I know we touched upon it with the, I can't remember what it's called, but like the knowledge sharing, the money sharing, and the pots of money. But, across the last year, I wrote my diss on grassroots music venues, and I know we talk about struggling festivals, struggling music venues, but also struggling artists. And what are the kind of avenues where it's not just the music union, but what are the actual, when we see lots of people on Instagram with 2,000 followers, like, oh, we can't go on anymore, we've got all of these rent pressures, we've got all of these issues happening, like how can people kind of have that solidarity within this grassroots music circuit, especially when touring circuits are breaking down, opportunities are breaking down. This is very pessimistic, I'm sorry. But like, what are the opportunities for community? Yes, you spoke about that kind of like money sharing, knowledge sharing pot, but what are the other ways that people also can increase their literacy in like applying for funding, applying for PRS, all of these different things? That's to all there.
I would say firstly, definitely to set up your own version of the business or the system or the festival or whichever. You got to build your own version. You got to build your own table to sit around with your people. Period. Like, I don't really know how. That's all I've ever seen, and all I ever have known is like on your own terms. Do you know what I mean? It has to be on your own terms, and also, I think it goes back to what I was saying about like the value and worth, and knowing how to then, callously speaking, commodify that further, because it is being shoved up our asses. Do you know what I mean? As artists, we have to bow down at some point and be like, I'm gonna be compromised. But at that point, I might be able to be very clever with the profit, so the turnover covers all my people getting paid, and the profit covers my next endeavour. Then it's marginally a little bit more acceptable, maybe, around your own table. Do you know what I mean? It's a lot of metaphors, but yeah.
I think like having knowledge and access to more, like, are you a musician? Yourself?
Really.
Okay, cool. Dabble, maybe a little. Alright. But like, I think for musicians, like knowing about funding and having accessibility about funding, a lot of the time, like, I didn't know, I knew sweet fuck all until we had like a decent manager who was like, you can apply for this, 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 and this. And that's another thing when it comes to accessibility. Because unless you have a manager, like a sparkly manager doing all of this shit for you, then you don't even know. So I think in regards to like, as you said, like a community thing, what we can do, I think it's about like sharing, as we've said, like sharing knowledge that you have. Also, on like an individual standpoint, the musicians union are fucking great. And like, I used to, before we'd like management and stuff, and I had no fucking clue like what we were doing, we were making no money, working a million jobs, blah, blah, blah. You can call them up and you can ask for advice on stuff. They have loads of fucking resources. So like, if anyone you know is a musician and doesn't really know what to do, because that is, I don't think you're being pessimistic, I think this is how the music industry is. And there's a reason why we have such a huge class disparity as well, because if you have mummy and daddy paying your rent, ultimately, it means that you don't have to work 5 full-time jobs, and you can do, you know, music as your full-time job, and you get to do that more than someone who has to work 5 jobs because they don't have anyone paying their rent. So it's not pessimistic, I think it's very realistic. And I think what is most important is for anyone who is in, you know, a grassroots space, a community space, is to be sharing that knowledge and making sure that you are helping each other out, because we're all in the same fucking boat, really.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I just want to add to that is you know, I run a trade association. Join a trade association, join a union, join a movement.
Yeah.
You know, like Music Venues Trust. I'm going to pick on Charlie. You know, there was 800 and something venues across the country, and they weren't joined up. And by joining up around a crisis, there shouldn't be a Music Venues Trust. If we know part of this is like, is the industry stacked against you? Yes, it fucking is. Because venues were suffering and venues were closing, and the existing music industry was doing fuck all about it. And that forced a venue owner, Mark David, to think, how can I start to mobilise? And he pulled everyone together. And then where we get to, if you want to be down about it, they created a levy, which some of those associations want all of the money. And yet they were the ones, they shouldn't be a music venues just because they should have fixed it all in the first place so they can fuck off. Right? But like, you know, so the trade associations, unions are really important. Before I did this job, for a long time, I was like Keith, I was a comedian come promoter. I was a grassroots music promoter, doing all those things. And at some point, I joined the AIF because I ran a festival. So I used to be a member of AIF, and it was great. You'd meet every 4 times a year, chat, share knowledge. And I was like, I need this, but for promoting, like for my other world. And I looked out, and is there anything? There was a thing called the Concert Promoters Association. So I emailed them and said, can I join? They said, yes, 250 quid. I said, great, when do you meet? We never meet. We just have a board, and we send around some emails. And that organisation still exists, and guess who dominates it? Right?
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, fuck that. So I found some other promoters I got to meet, you know, Nathan, the Brudenell, and we met in a pub, and I copied AIF. 5 of us met in Brighton at the Great Escape, and we formed the Association of Independent Promoters.
Yeah.
And I'm not involved with it anymore because I'm now here, but there's 160, 170 promoters. So also, if you see a group and you don't like it and it doesn't work for you, fuck it, form your own. But then when you find groups, and this is like tonight you've got 2 groups who've met. If you find other groups, collaborate. And that's how you build strength. So, and then hopefully you'll get all the things that you need. If you're in a group and it's not working for you, ask it. You know, like most of my members, I think, are really positive and they're encouraging. But like a member wrote to me the other day, really angry about stuff. And I hated reading the email, but it's important to get that feedback. Like, I am fucking struggling here and I really need this. And that's good, right? That's good. And then you can try and go do something about it. So ask of your groups, and ultimately.
I feel like this has been really well covered, so I can take another question if there's one.
We'll take the final question from you.
There we go. So I was following on about the topic about accessibility into music. Obviously, I'm not from London, as you can tell from my voice. But live music was a big choice over like where I went to uni. Obviously, I said to myself, I don't want to go anywhere that's got a worse scene than Manchester and Liverpool, just either singularly or combined. And it felt like London was my only option. And I see now that not just music has lost a lot of funds in education, but languages. You can't do a French or German A level to save your life these days if you're not in some wacky sixth form or whatever. It's pretentious as hell. But I wanted to make the point of the making more routes into music, not just surrounding London, and what routes outside of that sort of this sort of hubbub in a way exists. Because I know a lot of people, like where I used to go to college, they've set up bands and there's just no route out of that small bordering on Midlands, I'm going to say it, shithole, where there's barely any opportunities, there's not any links to promoters, and they're just stuck because they can't get to Manchester very easily. The last train's at like what, 10? So they can't access those opportunities, they're in bigger cities, and they just end up marooned. And I was just wondering what would you change about more sort of like, if you had like a magic wand, I hate the question if you had a magic wand because I've been asked it since I was 9, but yeah, if you had like a magic wand more within like the regional sort of music in a way, what's one thing you would change?
Can I just say, that is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, how privileged we are in London. Deep what she's saying, what you're saying, sorry, you get me, like facts. Last bus at 10,
Yeah,
like, you get me?
The
Yeah.
Manchester back
Yes, we have to understand something. We have a lot of opportunity, like just by the fact that there's just the money is here. It's that Game of Thrones, you get me?
All the companies are here. I mean,
right.
I go past Isle of Wight's office on the tube, I'm thinking, fuck me,
I
didn't realise the Isle of Wight was in Putney.
Right. There you go. Yeah, but I just gotta say, that's a living, breathing example of what's going on. Do you know what I mean? So big up yourself. I would just say, if I had a magic wand to make it less London-centric, maybe, I would definitely look again at access, and I think it kind of revolves a lot more like a kind of DIY Red Bull Academy type thing that we can build ourselves. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's what it boils down to. I do believe there is a space in Preston. I can't remember.
Is it Ferret?
No, begins with P. I can't remember. Someone came to the studio and was like, "This is just like da-da-da in Preston," and I was like, "Rah, okay." So there's like a kind of Manchester version of what we're doing at the Room, or ex-central geographically around there. I don't know, but if there was a way to make it less London-centric, I think it's just about people building their own house. Period. Do you know what I mean? Like, again, it's the same with the table, the house, like whichever construction you want to pick up, but like, you have to have your own.
Yeah.
I can't stress it enough. Don't buy the myth that it's all over here as well. I'm gonna just say that.
Never.
Yeah, glad to hear it. Do you know what I mean? Just on a bit personal one, but like, there's only so much here.
Yeah, gotcha.
Do you know what I mean? I feel like a little bit biased as well, because what I will also say is that this is slightly controversial, but it's not all up to the artist as well. We don't have to take on the responsibility of all of this. We can just do our thing and just make your music in your space with your people and let that live and be what it is. Because if it's timeless, it will live forever and people will hear it and it will just do its thing. Do you know what I mean? Come out of the monetary side of it, one day it makes money, great, so be it. But if that's not the objective, then, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah.
The Irish government have done a really interesting thing. So like, how many fucking bands are coming out of Ireland? And I'm Scottish and I'm like, where are we guys? Like, what's going on? Like, there are some really good ones, but it feels like an Irish invasion. In a good way, come on. And their government were like, hey, let's give creative people a basic living wage. And it allowed them, so they've done a study, and I think they got something like 3 times as much money as they invested into the people back from the people from the art they were creating. That is just needs to happen. And if you could start that in small towns, and you would suddenly, because there probably is spaces, there's like disused shops and like old rundown buildings that'd be perfect for art galleries and things that people could take on and take care of. So that's how we regenerate. We always regenerate using the arts. We get pushed out. Look at fucking Viner Street and places like that. They helped. Hackney's been completely regenerated by the arts. And now it's like, well, fuck off. Moth Club. They're trying to shut Moth Club down.
Art washed. It's been art washed.
So, these they need to get grants into these towns, and then, they'll pull themselves up. People will pull themselves up if they get the opportunity. We just need to give them that opportunity. So, yeah.
I would create a basic income. I mean, yeah, I agree. I would create a basic income for promoters, because and for festival promoters, because everybody's important in the sector, but you need somebody to go, I'm going to put the show on. Sometimes that is an independent promoter like Keith. Sometimes it's somebody like a venue that says, I'll take a risk. And sometimes it's an artist who says, I'm going to go out in the street and busk. At that point, they're not getting paid. At that point, they're a promoter. So basic income for promoters. Second thing I'd do is all the academy group, I would somehow make it into a not-for-profit. Probably give it to Music Venues just to run. Because at that point, you've kind of gone through the grassroots that make no money, and that's the point where everybody starts to earn. But instead of it going off and being extracted back to London and to the majors, it would go trickle back down into the grassroots. It's the first point of centralisation, and then related to that, I would make it law or something that, I don't know if I make it law, but the independent promoters, and Keith alluded to this, you know, they're often the ones that are putting people on in the grassroots, and then as they go up, they lose them, they have to fight them, or it's a big battle. Now I recognise that as you get bigger, you know, you are the Lamborghini girls and you're suddenly getting offered your global tour. You know, you might need to centralise that a bit, so it might make sense to have somebody central. But you could do it in a way that doesn't cut out the independent promoters. So those bigger shows, in 2016, 2017, a lot of the arena shows there was lots of independent promoters represented, or they would co-promote those shows with Live Nation, SGM, Kilimanjaro, DHB. In 2026, no independent promoters are represented anymore. That's gone entirely. Those relationships have gone entirely. So we need to build that in terms of the legislation, because guess what? Those independent promoters, wherever they're based, will, because they're all crazy, gamble it back, they'll put it back into the grassroots, they'll put it back into the local system, they'll back the next, they're not looking at a spreadsheet, although Keith tells me only books sold out shows. They're not basing it on a spreadsheet, they're basing it on their ears and their heart, and that's what we need, and that's what they'll do in their local communities, so that would be my wishes.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's much more to add, but I think, again, like an overarching point in this conversation has been about community. Yeah. And, you know, you think about like the government ultimately not giving a fuck about areas outside of London at all, which fucking sucks. And you do see, you know, you see like the Brits this year, they're going to be in Manchester, right?
Yeah, they are.
And then the Mercuries were in Newcastle,
next year as well.
which is great. You know, it's a start. It doesn't really cater to any of the music scenes. Yeah.
They had a lot of backlash. I think it was mostly London and Brighton.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing the London one, and then there's like, you know, it's fine. Yeah, but they're doing what? The Manchester, there's a Manchester one, there's a, yeah. So it's like, there are certain things, little things, so they go, we'll give you this, and then fuck the rest of you. So it doesn't really make any difference. But the thing is with that culture and grassroots things, it you know, it's subcultural. It comes from the ground up, unfortunately. And as Keith said about like Ireland's payment scheme for Irish musicians, it also happens in France, it also happens in the Netherlands. So it's not like this crazy fucking idea that's like, what my god, like you can do it and it can work and it can provide for the economy. So it does feel kind of powerless, but again, what there is if we can mobilise and engage enough people to give a shit about it, and I know it's, you know, really trying times and people are struggling to put food on their plates, we're told that art isn't essential, and it is, and I think it's such a human thing, and we really crave community, and I think as humans we all really want togetherness and connection.
Yeah.
And if we can mobilise people to ultimately give a shit, then it does get to the point after a while where the government does have to listen as well.
Yeah.
I think that's an amazing point to end tonight's conversation. Thank you so much for sticking with us. I know we've gone a bit over time. Just to finish, usually we like to plug a few community schemes that we've been involved with. Last time we were talking about the Moth Club petition. I don't know, is that still going?
Yeah, we're on 33,000 and
What's the target?
sorry?
Is there a target? Just as
Not
many as
really.
possible,
We were hoping for 10,000, but someone came round and graffitied all our QR codes the other day, which we assume is from the Connecting Potential building. So watch out for our social media. We're going to be posting that CCTV footage of that. So yeah, thank you. Just Google Moth Club petition, please sign it.
Yeah. If everyone in this room could please sign it, tell one person, that's 100 people. It's stuff like that which really works. And then the final thing is, a big thing for artists and independent artists is streaming services. They're inherently quite evil when it comes to paying artists. And talking to friends and collaborators and these ideas of creating new ideas, there is a new streaming platform which is very interesting. It's partnering with independent labels, and as a very short final thing before you can all leave, Ted from Cantilever is going to come tell you a little bit about it, and it's on the screen, it's a QR code.
Yeah, my name's Ted, I work for Cantilever alongside Aaron, who founded it. And basically Cantilever is a new app that launched in November. It currently streams 10 albums a month. And basically every 3 days a new one comes on, a new one leaves, like Mubi used to be originally. Each album is presented with like a big long write-up, so that it encourages everyone to kind of listen deeply and interact with what they're listening to. Everyone's listening to the same things at the same time. That's all the ideas behind it. In terms of artist stuff, obviously there's a way smaller artist pool on it, so the subscription fee at the moment is $5 a month, and 70% of that goes to whichever artist are on at the time, and then is split between those artists. Also on a user-centric model, which means that your specific subscription fee goes to whatever you listen to, basically. And if you don't listen to anything, it gets split, whatever. So if you scan the QR code, you can get a free month's trial, try it out. And that's it.
Ask a question. Who curates the albums? How do you choose what goes on there?
It's sort of curated by us at Cantilever, but it's also quite driven by the journalists who write the pieces, basically. So we've partnered with most of the kind of bigger independent labels now, and then are working to build with smaller labels as well, kind of once we've done that. We have a group of about, I think, 6 to 8 journalists at the moment. And partly it's directed by us, but partly it's directed by them. And then we're also doing things where we partner with specific organisations to curate like a little group of albums. So there's a festival in, I think it's in May, called Dig That Treasure, which is like an experimental music festival in London. There's programming 4 gigs, I think, across a weekend, and they're doing like a little series with us. So they've like picked 3 of the albums from their lineup, and they're going to be on there with write-ups and interviews and stuff. And then that's introduced us to the labels that have then put those out, and it all branches out from there, is the idea.
Community.
Good question.
Community, they have it. Say one Spotify, big my there you go.
Yeah.
So that's all from us. Let's give a massive round of applause to our panelists. Also a big thank you to Anna of this project. She's been absolutely amazing to work with. Wow. A pleasure to work together on something. We hope that you've been inspired. We hope that you've taken things away. You can check out both our socials. We'll be posting the audio link to this, as well as little visual snippets of kind of like the best pieces of conversation, which will be very hard to narrow down. But yeah, that's all from us. Happy Monday. Thanks for sticking with us. We'll all be around for a little bit if anyone wants a little chat or anything. Ella and I and the rest of the teams will be upstairs. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.